May the Lord give this council the wisdom, discernment and courage to serve the community. Grant also that we may act compassionately and integrity in the best interest of this Shire, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. I would like to show respect and acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land and elders past, present and future on which this meeting takes place. Thank you, councillors. Please be reminded that this meeting has been recorded and live streamed on YouTube. Could all councillors please ensure they use their microphones when speaking? Application for attending the meeting by video link.
There's nil, Mr Mayor.
Apologies or application of leave.
Nil received.
Public participation.
None for tonight, Mr Mayor.
Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 29th of June. Got a move up. Move Councillor McGill, second Councillor Ryan. Any questions, comment? All in favour? Motion is carried. Disclosure of interest.
I've received two, Mr Mayor. The first is from Councillor McPhee in regard to Notice of Motion 7.2, the lack of social licence in regard to the Energy Co project. She has disclosed a non-pecuniary, non-significant interest as she lives in the community that she is representing in regard to the large proposed infrastructure project, and she will take no further action or remain in the chamber for that matter. I also have one just lodged by Councillor Fraser for the same item, item NM 7.2. He is disclosing that he has a pecuniary non-significant. I'll just point out, if you have a pecuniary interest, it has to be significant under the Code of Conduct. As his family owns land potentially affected by the RES, he has identified that he will have have no involvement, Mr Mayor, in that matter. So that's the only two I've received.
Thank you. Okay, we'll jump straight into agenda items on page 18. It's Environmental and Community Services. We might split this up into three separate. So I can move it for the dot point 1, adopt the minutes. Move Councillor McGill, seconder. Councillor McPhee. Questions, comment? All in favour? Against, it is carried. Dot point 2, councillors, you might have got, there was an amendment on the 23rd of the 7th, a memo of conditions added to the recommendation. Everyone got that, no doubt. So the dot point 2, can I get a mover with those? I'd
move that as amended at the end.
Amended at the end, thank you. Councillor McGill, seconder. Councillor Ryan, any questions, comment? Councillor McGill.
Yeah, I might have asked this if we were at the back having a briefing, but instead I'll ask through the Director of Environment. I note that it says 120 persons is the maximum number of people within the wine bar. Does that include staff?
Through you, Mr Bear, I believe so. It's for the entire, all persons within that premises.
I just hope that the proponent would be aware of that staff are taken into that tally.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, that was the figure that was nominated by the applicant, and it's based on the toilet facilities and so forth in the building under the Building Code of Australia.
Okay, no more questions, comment? Nope. All in favour? Against is carried. Dot point 3, as it says. Move Councillor McGill, second McPhee. Councillor McPhee, questions, comment? Councillor McGill.
A neighbour had some issues with this development. We've had the proponent came to the environment meeting and they've agreed to go away and reconsider their application. There are ways in which they can change it around which will address some of those concerns expressed by others and make for a better development. So Council supported that in respect of the deferment.
Thank you. Councillor McPhee.
I'd also like to thank the Director of Environmental and Community Services for organising some on-site looks. So we went to both of these, and what was really helpful is that we got to speak to the proponents, but also help problem solve so that if there were any issues, it was working with those who were putting in the DA, and I thought that was a really kind of good way of going about things. So thank you for that.
Yep. Any other questions, comment? No, we'll put it as is. All in favour? Against is carried. Over to page 31, Infrastructure Services. Can move it. Councillor McGill, seconder. Councillor Clout. Any questions, comment? No. All in favour? Motion is carried. Over to page 35, Corporate Services Committee. Can I move it? Move, Councillor McGill. Second, Councillor Stoltz. Well chaired, Councillor Stoltz.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any questions, comment, discussion? Councillor McGill.
Yes, just a question through to the General Manager. I note the grants report within this is nothing too encouraging, considering how much stake we've in the current Depop we've put on getting grants. What's your feeling at this stage, whether we're going to be tracking for those grants or whether we're in a fool's paradise?
Yeah, thanks through you, Mr Mayor. Certainly, there's a number of grants that we are applying for, and you'll see that in the list. There's quite a considerable amount of grants. What we've seen recently, though, is that the quantum of the grants in dollar terms is reducing. So whilst there might be a high number of grants that we're applying for, the value is generally relatively low. There's not a lot of those high value grants. So the ones we're picking up are small little community project type grants. They're not the large infrastructure style projects that we were getting some years ago. I think it's a bit of a trend that we're seeing across the board with grant funding drying up. And so we'll continue to apply, but I think the types of applications we'll be making will probably be more the lobbying type ones where we actually physically knock on ministers' doors to try and get funding for large projects, because we're not seeing it come through the normal grant programs.
Just a supplementary too, you're obviously aware that the Commonwealth's reviewing currently how they deal with natural disasters, and they're talking about changing the threshold from $250,000 to 2.7 million. What sort of impact would that have on Upper Hunter if that was to take place? And if it's an adverse impact, will we be lobbying?
Yeah, so just as a bit of background through you, Mr Mayor, all the emergency funding is administered through what's called the NEMA, which is the National Emergency Management Arrangements. That's a federal government document. It then controls the funding that goes to the states. When we were in Canberra, we actually had a quick conversation with Minister for Infrastructure, Catherine King, who alerted us to the fact that this was potentially changing. There is 4 categories under the emergency management arrangements. Only one of those categories allows for the states to call on the federal government to assist them. And the claim by the federal government is that the states aren't enacting the first 3 types of emergencies because they're on the hook for the whole amount. They're waiting till the emergency. They're only enacting the emergencies under Category D, I think it is, which enables federal government assistance. So to change that, the federal government's changing the rules, and it means that there'll be quite a change in the distribution. I think the short answer is, though, we've been shortchanged in emergency funding in the past, and I'm not seeing any of these changes resulting in us getting any better arrangements. I think we'll continue to find that as we go through these emergency issues in the future, there will still be shortfalls between the actual costs that we experience and what is provided through either of the 2 governments.
Okay, no more questions? All in favour? Against, the motion is carried. Over to page 41, good news story, Aberdeen Investment Committee. There's 7 points of the recommendation. Got a mover, Councillor Shields, the seconder, Councillor McPhee. Questions, comment? Councillor Shields, were you about to hit the button or not? You right? Not right. Councillor McGill.
Yeah, look, just one comment. Social media, you get people who are lacking in brain cells, who would tell you that all this money from Aberdeen is coming to Scone. Please, let's publicise the fact that it's actually going where it's intended to go, which is Aberdeen, not to Scone.
Any more questions, comments? Councillor Shields.
Look, I will just make the comment that the items 6 and 7 were deferred on the basis that we need additional information from the various proponents. They are worthwhile projects, but we just want more information before we spend Mac Energy's money on those two issues. But the rest of it is pretty good.
You, no more questions, comments? No. All in favour? Against is carried. Over to page 46, the Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference 2026. Got a suggestion or a mover? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had this discussion last year with regard to sending a delegation to events, New South Wales and federally. I think from personally, my position remains the same. I think that we should have a seat at the table in these events, but I'm not sure that sending a full delegation is necessary or warranted. So in terms of the recommendation, I would suggest that we consider, perhaps in the first instance, nominating the Mayor or their delegate. We've got sufficient time, I think, to determine what representation we need. This is in November. I'm certainly all for the General Manager participating in these events as well, but that would be a suggestion I'd make as an alteration to the recommendation. My fellow councillors would agree to that.
Okay, we've got a seconder. Seconder, Councillor McPhee. Any questions, comment? Councillor McGill.
Yeah, just a question. I don't know whether the General Manager would know the answer to this. If we go for the early bird registration, will they lock it into a name or just a delegate?
Through Mr. Mayor, I believe we can just register a delegate. If we do have to give a name, most of the conferences allow you to change the name at some stage in the future.
Yep. No more questions, comment? No, all in favour? Councillor Collison, Williamson, Stoltz, Steeles, Ryan, McPhee, McGill and Clout for, and Councillor Fraser against. The motion is carried. Well, over to page 49. Local Government General Amendment, Meetings, Regulations 2026 and Council Advocacy Response. 7 parts of the recommendation, councillors. Move, Councillor McGill as is. Second to Councillor Shields. Any questions, comment, debate? Councillor McGill.
I don't know what happened in botany, but it must have been pretty traumatic because the impacts are still lasting. All these new rules seem to be written for, Tumut and Liverpool and a couple of other councils. None of them seem to acknowledge what happens out here in rural councils. Northern Beaches deals with normal council stuff. Their add-on is, of course, the surf beaches that look after the rest of Sydney. Up here, we deal with water, sewerage, airports, things that councils in the metropolitan area have no idea about. They don't go near them. So we, as councillors, need a whole level of additional information to deal with those issues. We're not just talking about library books and rubbish. Suddenly we're talking about major infrastructure. And if we can't get information and briefings from the General Manager and through the General Manager from staff, then how do we hope to make any concrete, sensible decisions? We can't operate the council on ignorance. We certainly, I would advocate across all the country, mayors, a civil disobedience. Sorry, Mr. Minister, your idea is wrong. Wrong, wrong.
Councillor Shields.
I would thoroughly concur with your comments about civil disobedience. They are making this job too hard, and your point about infrastructure that the city councils have no understanding of, we do need to be able to get briefings, whether it be from salaried officers or whether it be from people like the NBN or those sorts of people. I totally agree with Councillor McGill on this. The downside on this, I think, is whether people will be prepared to stand to represent their councils, because their communities, because this is just becoming a far too difficult job.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor McPhee.
It's also funny because on one hand they're treating us like mushrooms, and then on the other hand they're trying to tighten up a code of conduct. So I do feel like I'm back at school, and I do feel like I'm being told just do what you're told, and it's this big government overreach yet again that we're seeing, that, you know, let us do our jobs. Give us the money to do our jobs. Let us do our jobs, because we're the ones that are walking amongst the community, and we know better. So yeah, I fully concur with the last two speakers.
Thank you. Any other comment? Nope. We'll put the motion. All in favour? Motion is carried. Over councillors, we'll deal with the late report. We should have a extra copy there. I think everyone's got it. Yep. So it's the draft submission to the Office of Local Government, improving councillor accountability and the model code of conduct for councillors. Two parts of the recommendation. Mover. Move, Councillor Clout. Seconder, Councillor Stoltz. Don't wish to speak? No? Any other questions, comment? No? Councillor McGill.
Yeah, look, my only comment is I think it's too passive. Quite frankly, I think we could go a bit tougher with the message. That's just a little bit too passive for me.
Any other comments, questions? Nope. We'll put the motion as is, the 2 points of recommendation. All in favour? Against? Carried. Over to page 57 is the Scone Indoor Sporting Facility. 2 points of the recommendation. Got a mover. Councillor Stoltz, a seconder. Councillor Shields. Questions, comment, discussion? Councillor McGill.
At a $24 million budget, yes, this document's fabulous for advocacy, but not for actual action at this stage. Till such time as someone opens their chequebook, it's a nice report.
Agree, the chequebook has to be opened. No other comments, questions? Councillor Williamson.
Just concurring with my fellow councillor there, and I actually think it's a lovely document, but probably negates any chance of making this an actuality. Speaking with the local member today, and yeah, the struggle that we're going to have trying to find that sort of resources, I'm not sure that we've put a very functional document here. We just need a shed. But anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
Now, Councillor Shields.
Yes, I did have one question through you, Mr. Mayor, and that was one of the respondents who responded to the public public exhibition went for the cheapest option on the basis that it would affect the hiring charges. And my question through you, Mr. Mayor, is between a $20-odd million project, and I can't remember what the lower number is. What is it? 14 million. How does that affect the hiring charges? I mean, would that have a significant effect on hiring charges?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll jump in. We don't know what the hiring charges will be, but the intent is that we would recover any outstanding costs. Now, if we can get a full grant that covers the full construction cost, then our operating costs will only be, the operating fees, or the fees charged to the users, will be set such that they match the annual operating costs. The operating cost between the two buildings probably won't be too much different. However, if we don't get a full grant and the capital cost has to be somehow met by council, either through some sort of loan functional other means, then we'd need to recover that original capital cost. So we made that clear to the community when we put the options out, that the different options may have different operating and capital costs and therefore may result in different fee structures.
Thank you. No more questions? No. Put the motion. In favour? Against? Carried. Over to page... Were you against, sorry, Councillor? Oh, sorry. Oh, righto, sorry. Councillor Clout and Councillor Williamson against. Sorry. Okay. Over to page 91, rescission motion, the council resolution 26/11829. Got a mover. Move Councillor McGill. Seconder. Councillor Fraser, is it? Or Councillor whoever? Yep. You wish to speak? Councillor McGill.
At our last meeting, we obviously dealt with the Depop and the ongoing budget. There are hundreds of lines of fees and charges. We sought to amend one only, and only this one that's before us as part of the rescission motion. And that was in respect of aircraft over 20,000 kilos. The staff had suggested a 5,900 thereabouts landing fee. We then amended it back to, 1,300. This resolution didn't seek to amend the 15,000 kilo number for non-Scone resident aeroplanes, only for Scone residents. So that was an inconsistency. One of the negatives of the minister's position, if we lose briefing sessions, we'll lose the briefing session that we had during the Depop process. Not all of us came to every meeting of that, but some of us did. And we were pretty well given, via the General Manager, clear position on the state of the runway at the airport and the ongoing damage that can be caused takeoff and landing of overweight aircraft, larger aircraft. And the recommendation was keep the fee high as a disincentive for those aircraft in order to protect that runway in the longer term. An appropriate response on behalf of the citizens of this community is to look after that runway, not to trash it and hope that Mum and Dad will give us a new runway for Christmas, because that's not going to happen. We can't rely on the other two levels of government to fund us out of this problem. We have to utilise that runway responsibly and strategically. And so, to my mind, the 5,900 fee is a disincentive for the larger aircraft, because I'm advised via the General Manager that those aircraft will do damage. My expertise on runways, on airports, stops at the baggage check-in, the overpriced food and beverage, and watching everyone else's baggage go round and round on the counter. That's why I rely on information input from senior officials of this council who have done the research. I say we back them in. They recommended a fee. We sought to amend it. I say no, no amendment. Let's go with the original recommendation. It was appropriate and timely. Thank you.
Councillor Fraser, you were the second, weren't you? Yep, you wish to speak?
I don't really have much to add, except it is... I support what Councillor McGill said. I mean, it's patently ridiculous that we're effectively trying to encourage these enormous aircraft that are going to do damage and significant damage to the runway and give them a discounted fee to come and do so. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's absolutely mind-numbingly stupid, I would have to say. But having said that, we now have the opportunity to fix the problem, and I suggest that we do.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Shields, speaking for or against?
Speaking against.
Against.
I find it interesting the way this debate has gone on. Now, it seems to me there's a conflation of a whole group of different problems. The runway issue is one that's based on the fact that the runway was poorly constructed in the first place, And then I think around about 2019, when some remediation work was undertaken, that was done poorly. And so we're paying a price for that. But the other side of this is to actually work on what aircraft. So on the 7th of July this year, I downloaded the CASA Civil Aviation Register for Australia. It's an Excel spreadsheet. You can do all sorts of wonderful things with it. Maximum takeoff weight, which these charges are based on, happens to be about the 4th or 5th column in. It's a pretty useful document, and you can order that column from lightest to heaviest or heaviest to lightest, whichever way you want to go. So let's talk about 20-tonne aircraft and above. On the Australian Register at the moment, there are 630-something aircraft in that category. And the vast majority of them are RPT aircraft. Talking about, at the bottom end of the scale, you're talking about Dash 8s and ATR 72s, and they ain't coming. They're not coming. There's a few Warbirds in there, and I can't really see that they are an issue. There's a fairly small number of business jets, and business jets will come to our airport for things like the Scone Cup. You've only got to go out there on Scone Cup Day to see the lineup of fairly impressive aviation hardware sitting there. We had an issue with 3 aircraft that have a maximum takeoff weight of just under 50 tonnes, and they sit on that list, the 630 odd list, at positions 216 through 218. So let's think about the aircraft that are underneath them. And again, they are all, well not all, but the vast majority of them are RPTs. There are 60 -8 400s in Australia. They come in around about 22,000 kilos. There are 53 Fokker F-28 turbofan jets.
Point of order. I'm just trying to work out the relevance of this to the actual rescission motion.
Well, the relevance is that we're trying to scare away heavy aircraft, supposedly for reasons to save our runway.
Just Councillor Shields, there's been a point of order.
Yep.
But I think if you wish to explain, as long as it's not going to go on for too much longer, I'll overrule the point of order.
Well, there just aren't a lot of aircraft that come into this category. That's the simple fact. So then you consider the category that's under 20 tonnes. And there are 230 aircraft in that. And guess what? Most of them are RPT aircraft. And in that group, there are 73 Saab 340s, which are RPTs, Dash 8, 300, 200 and 100 series. And there's 50 of those. There are 25 helicopters in that classification. And they don't even use a runway.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering if this point of order is going to be upheld because I'm still lacking any understanding of what this means.
Councillor Shields, you've got 10 more seconds. Councillor Shields, and your 5 minutes is up.
Well, we are never going to attract serious aviation business to our airport if we have this restriction in place. And
Thank you.
that's it.
Any other speakers?
Through you, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Trout
I'd just like a
speaking.
bit of clarity. It's my understanding that it's not just the weight of the planes, it's actually the gas in the tyres or the tyre pressure. I'm unsure as to which one it is. But some of the smaller aircraft that actually go up higher in the sky than some of the bigger ones, so when they're actually landing on the runway, they actually do more damage because their tyre pressure is either higher or lower, or they've got the gas in, or whatever it is, because they actually can go higher up into the atmosphere. Is that actually true? Because that sort of makes a big difference if we're voting to keep the really heavy ones off, but because of how high they go up, they don't actually have as much issue with the runway. I don't know.
I'll just put that down as a question.
Yeah, it's a question.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The stress that is put onto the runway is a function of both mass and tyre pressure. So some aircraft are requested to reduce their tyre pressure for very heavy mass aircraft to reduce that stress. The GHD report that I've offered to all councillors that did the analysis took this into account. So the aircraft that we're looking at have a takeoff weight of about 51 tonne. And yes, they do run their tyre pressures at lower pressures, but the analysis that we undertook still shows a degradation to the runway, and it depends on which section of the runway you look at because the pavement has different strengths, but in the worst section you're looking at probably reducing the life of the runway from anything up to 50% in some instances, even with the reduced tyre pressures.
You might no, you haven't spoken. Yep, no, it's fine.
So I think we need to remember that these data that the General Manager's explained came from an independent study. It wasn't from having a chat to a pilot out at the airport. It was by someone who actually does this. And it also gets back down to the very fact that our tarmac is not geared for these heavy landings. And it has said quite clearly if we continue to allow these types of planes to land, it reduces the life of our tarmac from 20 years to 5 or about 6 or something like that. So this is, for me, we have a responsibility to the ratepayer. We already have a cost to the ratepayer with this airport as it currently stands. It's like driving a vehicle and not getting it serviced and then expecting someone to pay for it. Or driving over, I mean, we have bridges that have weights on them. We're not going to then just say, oh, well, this person's going to bring great business, so we'll let them drive their truck, which is 1 tonne over the limit, over a bridge. These things are just, this is for me, it's government, it's actually looking after our ratepayer with an asset that already is costing them money.
I can close it. I moved it.
I got a question, Mr. GM. Does any councillor know in the Depop a plane weighing 20,000 kilos working with the RFS what the landing fee is on an RFS call-in sign? Councillor Shields?
$400.
$400. So I'm just using a scenario. A plane of 20,000, if I think I'm correct, a plane of 20,000 kilos fighting planes in the area can land on that strip out there for $400. Is that correct?
So if those aircraft had an RFS designation, that's correct. They don't have an RFS designation at this stage. The heaviest aircraft under the emergency provisions are the aircraft operated by PAYS. You're right. Under the current fee structure, if they were to get RFS designation, they'd land for $400. At that stage, I would be recommending to councillors to change that $400 as well, because they will continue to do the same damage regardless of whether they're fighting a fire or landing for commercial purposes.
Thank you. Councillor McGill, no more councillors to speak for or against that haven't spoken? No. Councillor McGill, close the debate.
Interesting avenue you opened there. I don't think I'll move with that right now, but we'll leave that on the table. I think Councillor Shields said it all. The runway's in poor condition. There's no reason to exacerbate that condition. If we get the runway sorted out, then yes, let's revisit this sort of thing and encourage larger aircraft, but that's when the runway can withstand that sort of damage. At the moment, the advice is it will not withstand constant use at this weight and this sort of damage. That's why the rescission's here. Let's go forward from here. Thank you for your help.
Thank you, councillors. So that's it. So we're going to put the motion for those in favour of the rescission motion. Show of hands. I've got Fraser, McGill, McPhee, Clout, Ryan, Stoltz. Against, Collison, Williamson and Shields. The rescission motion is upheld. Over to page 92. We've got two conflicts, Mr. General Manager, but they're both staying in the room. Or no, Councillor George is moving.
Councillor Fraser will leave the room.
Councillor Fraser's moving. wait till he moves. Okay, councillors, Councillor McPhee's put the motion up. There's 6 points of the recommendation. Got a mover, Councillor McPhee, second Councillor McGill. Councillor McPhee.
So, the Australian Energy Market Operator's function is to ensure that all energy policies have consumer benefit. That is, that there is social licence, purpose and financial prudence to all proposed projects. AEMO's purpose is to ensure secure, reliable and affordable energy and enable the energy transition in the long-term interests for consumers. It is the system operator, market operator, national transmission planner and delivers key analysis and reporting across all markets. AEMO also produces an integrated system plan, which is to plan the national energy transmission. On the 25th of June this year, there was an initial release of their 2026 ISP. So how does this relate to the New England RES infrastructure project? Language is very important. Whilst the project is classified as actionable, AEMO is tasked with doing as it is intended, and that is to scrutinise government policies to ensure that the energy consumer benefits. However, this classification has recently been changed from actionable to anticipated. It now states, for the New England RES Network Infrastructure Project, following advice from the New South Wales Government, AEMO now considers the project as sufficiently progressed through the New South Wales framework to be classified as anticipated, and therefore the actionability of the project cannot be retested. Has not been retested in the 2026 ISP. Anticipated. What this means is that the New South Wales Labor Government is no longer listening to the experts that ensure that all infrastructure is for the interests of the New South Wales residents, but they will simply do as they wish, come hell or high water. They will ignore local knowledge, dismiss safety concerns and use overarching powers to quash community outcry. AEMO is simply saying, we wash our hands of this because they are not listening and we don't want the blood on our hands. Minister Penny Sharp and Premier Chris Minns are not interested in getting this project done right. They are only interested in getting it done, and they are using the blunt instrument of Energy Co to do it. All parties have ignored feedback from affected landholders and contradict their own environmental policies to bulldoze through prime farmland for what is proving to be a white elephant. Only just 2 weeks ago, Squadron, Twiggy Forrest's energy company, officially walked away from the major proposed infrastructure for wind renewable energy in the New England, making the entire transmission lines project questionably unviable. The initial costing of $4 billion has already blown to $20 billion, and there is no energy generation at the end of it, threatening to smash through prime agricultural land and pristine virgin forests, home to protected native flora and fauna. There is nothing green about this project. In a bid to swoon cash-strapped regional councils, Minister Penny Sharp swans in waving a $60 million cheque, which all affected councils get to compete for like some kind of sick beauty pageant. The Labor government must love watching regional councils beg for appropriate funding. It is absolutely criminal. They have ignored RFS concerns regarding firefighting capabilities and dismissed any opportunity to confer with local brigades. When concerns were brought up about flying firefighting planes around transmission lines, the response was that pilots would enjoy the extra challenge. As on the previously proposed corridor, prime agricultural land was purchased in preparation for construction, only for the corridor to be changed and the land to be left abandoned and unproductive. So, fellow councillors, I stand here representing hundreds of affected landholders who are pleading for local council to support them in having a voice, asking you to stand with them for a fair process and to insist that the New South Wales Labor Government works with AEMO and all relevant bodies to ensure that this project does not become a blight in our shire due to overzealous ideology and a complete disregard for its consequences.
Councillor McPhee. Seconder was Councillor McGill.
Yeah. Look, I rise to support this resolution. In doing so, I do say that I am personally supportive of renewable energy and where the future lies. But Julie and I have opted in. We put the batteries and the solar cells on our property. People up and down the Gundy Valley haven't opted in. They're being told they're getting a transmission line. People up the other end, up in Armidale, Tamworth, they're given the option to opt in, and slowly they're opting out. This should all be about choice, not about government bulldozing through. They do the future a disservice. Renewable energy must happen. It will happen, but it should be done in an environmentally sensitive way and without alienating people. It should be done so as not to make the rural sector bear the 100% of the burden. They're getting scot-free down in the cities. Totally support this resolution. Do not support the transmission line the way they're proposing. Have never had an adequate explanation as to why they moved from the original route anyway. And what are they going to do in 5 years' time when the existing cables have got to the end of life? They're going to go up the other valley and start ripping stuff out, or they're just going to leave it there? No, I support this resolution.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Rhines.
Thank you. I would like to support this motion. And in doing so, just make a couple of points. One is that what we're asking to do here is to note, acknowledge, express concern, and a call to action for the government. There's one additional comment that I might make and a suggestion, and I don't have a hard position on this, but with regard to point 6 at the very end, rather than saying advise of council's adopted position, so I'm not quite sure what that means, I wonder whether we might consider saying advising of council's concerns. This motion is all about representing the interests of our ratepayers, and I think we hear that loud and clear. I don't think there's anything that's unreasonable here in the context of the process. It's simply asking for things to be done correctly to get the correct outcome. So yeah, I'd just close by making that one suggestion. I don't have a hard position, but I'd just like to suggest maybe we could change those last 2 words from adopted position to concerns.
I'm happy to do that.
Mover, happy, seconder?
Yeah.
Happy? Okay, so just to change the 2 words to the 6th point.
To concerns.
Any other speakers for or against before we close debate? No, Councillor McPhee? Nothing? No more to say? Okay, we'll put the motion. All those in favour? Collison, Stoltz, Shields, Ryan, McPhee, McGill and Clout. Against is Councillor Williamson. Thank you. Councillor Fraser, that was in the affirmative apart from the last 2 words of dot point 6 from adopted position. The council's adopted position to council's concerns. Thank you, that was passed. Okay, councillors, anyone like to move me into closed council? Councillor Stoltz, second Councillor McGill. All in favour? Against is carried.